Edmond, welcome. Welcome back. How are
Thank
you?
you.
How are you?
I'm good, I'm good.
It's always good to see you, and the weather is amazing.
Yeah, it's a wonderful day today. Perfect.
So how are you doing?
Well, very good. Very excited about the work that we've been doing. We've got lots to catch up with.
Oh yes. And you've been on some of our overseas modules. I know that you went with EMBA to Africa, right?
Yes.
So we can talk about that, and I think we will talk about that.
Yeah.
Do you want to grab a coffee though?
Yeah, coffee would be amazing.
Let's grab. You have been growing quite a bit, right? So Acacia has been. Can I say on a roll? Maybe that's too much of a word. Though. Not struggling that much, given the current geopolitical realities.
Yeah, given the geopolitical backdrop, I think we're doing all right. We're growing, expanding, and making good investments.
Well, you will only find out later. you think you're making good investments.
That's true. That's true.
Okay, so what do you want?
Could I have a flat white?
So, I'll buy. So I'm going to try to practice my Mandarin.
Yes.
我们要一个热的美式和一个热的熬白。好的，所以我付一下。好的啊。Let's go and get our coffee, I guess.
Yeah, let's go.
So yours is the flat white.
Yeah, thank you.
And let's take a short walk.
All right.
Going back to the geopolitical tensions.
Yes.
Your fund has this creative, I think, strategy where you apply what you call geographic arbitrage, right?
Yes.
When you find the ideas that have worked, in China and could be transplanted successfully somewhere else. How is that working out? In the sense, has geopolitics changed your business model? Is it affecting it in any way?
I think geopolitics has definitely had an impact. Over the course of the last few years, there has been changes. To go back to the concept of geographic arbitrage, we're looking for business models that work in China, but they could also work from the US to emerging markets.
That's right. But presumably you're trying to find something that is more similar to China than the US.
Yes. In general, we are looking for China-centric businesses. And given that China is a leading market for technology now and industry leaders, there is a lot of content that we can use to apply to our investment decisions. Now, in terms of geopolitics, what is important is we do have sometimes some obstacles when we're talking with certain companies that may perceive us from our background that could be an obstacle for us, but that's not an Acacia problem, that's more of an industry-wide problem. So sometimes some firms may decide not to engage or not to have a conversation, so we have to work around those parameters. But we do find that there are still opportunities in emerging markets, for example in Latin America, where we have connected some of our portfolio companies to China giants, and we continue to make those introductions for them to capital raising and for business development.
So the idea is that you find those companies which operate in local markets outside China, and you can make the introduction with the Chinese giants, and that's the arbitrage, right?
Yes, correct.
As a finance professor, I'm always quite suspicious of the existence of arbitrage in the first place. So why is it that nobody else can do what you are doing?
That's a good point. I think the devil is really in the details. So essentially, looking for opportunities, pattern matching, spending time on the due diligence, and then applying a lot of input from the perspective of our team to identify opportunities that can really help on a business development perspective. The devil is in the details, and the devil is really in the efforts that we make as a team that we put into the process.
And you have a unique positioning, which I like in many ways, since you are essentially spanning China and the globe, right? So you are neither a Chinese venture capital fund, nor are you a purely global, non-Chinese venture capital fund. And there are not many funds like that left.
Yes.
perhaps because people are simply afraid to do these things in the current geopolitical environment.
Yeah.
So going back to this whole idea that value comes from somewhere. So what are the sources of value creation generally, in China, and for your fund specifically?
Yeah, sure. I think in terms of value creation over the last 30 years since the opening up of reform, we've really had the fundamental backdrop of some prudent and helpful policies in terms of government policies. And as a result, that's really pushed and created a unique environment for other value generating forces.
I mean, that's all good,
emerge.
but that's a China kind of macro thing. We're talking about your specific firm. So what you're saying is that, China got lucky. Or it prudently opened itself up, and this tide will lift all boats.
Yes,
but there must be some sort of unique value creation opportunities that VC firms like yours can take advantage of.
I think our team is uniquely positioned to be both global and China-centric at the same time. So we are anchored in China. We have a unique team of Chinese and international colleagues that both have the China angle, the China anchor, but also an international mindset.
You seem to be describing CEIBS, which actually is gonna bring us to I guess the next topic of our discussion.
Well, maybe we should hire more from CEIBS. Maybe that is the answer.
Do you mind if we take a seat at the auditorium and
yeah, sure.
Continue our
Would
conversation there? Which this is the usual hall where you had classes earlier.
Yeah, it's a beautiful building. I love the architecture.
So just as we were walking in, we talked about CEIBS and its mission. So I think one of our core missions, not the only one, but one of our core missions is to bridge China and the rest of the world. And your fund is playing in this field. So is there anything that CEIBS has given you in helping you actually perform better, find better opportunities, and address the challenges that inevitably arise?
Sure. I think from a foundational perspective, the learnings that I gained from the valuation creation course was very good at augmenting our process, our investment process. So we actually built in the value generation forces into our investment process.
That's my favorite concept. You don't have to say things just because I like them.
Oh, no, it's an important part. It's elevated our selection matrix.
Okay. We're glad to hear that.
Yeah, so we've called it Selection Matrix 3 now, the third version. But on a sort of more relational basis, I think just having the opportunity to go to two places, Sao Paulo, where we do a lot of work, and then also Africa to Ghana, we were able to understand a lot more about what's going on the ground by going to lectures, listening to fundamental principles, talking to people in the field, business leaders. And as a result, it unclouds a lot of that uncertainty. So often when you're looking at these opportunities, you're looking from a perspective of data and very macro level, high level statistics, and then it creates an air of uncertainty. So going to these places and being taught about the nuances there, it really allows us to remove that uncertainty. And when we underwrite our investments, when we try to make confident decisions, we have a lot more data points. So as a result, I think, from my perspective, for better or worse, I used to focus a lot on GDP per capita when I was looking at Africa. And when you go to the environment and then you see the opportunity and you see the entrepreneurialism in the people and the opportunity in the different sectors, and see from a company perspective, when you go to company visits, what they've done and how they've been successful, it gives you confidence to make better decisions.
So I'll rephrase that. Am I correct in saying, well, GDP anybody can look up, right? It's something that is publicly available data, requires no time and effort. While actually going to Africa and talking to people requires an investment of time and effort. And so you think that there are valuable opportunities that these visits that CEIBS actually organizes have opened up for you?
Definitely, tremendously. When I think about the structure of the program, we learned about not just business. Obviously, we learned about business, but we learned about politics, culture, historic nuances that play into all of those business environments. And when you get a very complete view of the micro and the macro in a very short period of time, you can then build on that foundation going forward. So I've made connections with alumni, I've made connections with teachers, and we continue those conversations to build on what we've built already.
You've made your first investment in Ghana, right?
In Rwanda and Kenya.
In Rwanda and Kenya.
Yeah.
But in Africa. How did that go? How do you actually do due diligence in Africa? So and that started after you visited Ghana as part of our program, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
So we visited Ghana on a module, and then we also took some time to go to Kenya afterwards. We spent a lot of time understanding the African continent from the perspective of basic business principles. And then, as I mentioned before, we made connections with alumni. Actually, it was through one of our professor contacts, Professor Nana, who introduced another investor that lives in Ghana, and we were able to gauge his information and his confidence level to do more thorough due diligence. And then based off of our learnings from the Ghana module and our experiences there that you could only gauge by going to that place, it's not something that you can teach in a book. It's really experiential. That, I think, gave me confidence in some of the fundamental decision criteria for the investment. There are some obstacles, but having been there, we were able to understand them and understand where the opportunities were.
So what about the culture gap? Is it difficult?
I think sometimes there is a culture gap, but I think also sometimes we can be a bit more similar than we.
Actually, I do agree with that. But that's a point that somehow gets underappreciated, also in our classrooms. I think when students just come in, they somehow believe that China is a different universe. So our Chinese students, from my experience, overestimate the extent to which China is different from the world, and our foreign-born students overestimate the extent to which the rest of the world is different from China. But as they mix and interact, I think they discover that we share many more similarities than we care to admit, and that actually is one of the key messages that I'm trying to convey, perhaps unsuccessfully.
To go back to your point, I think meeting the people on the ground, meeting the alumni, the CCT equivalents in Africa, and the professors there, they really did open up our eyes to a new opportunity and a new vision for Africa. Especially compared to my preconceived views and opinions, and I wouldn't have understood that unless I had been to that place. I wouldn't have understood that unless I had talked to the people, and I think that's what's really important. I think that's bridging the gaps between the two areas or two regions or different regions, and finding out where there are points of difference, but then also finding out where there are points of collaboration.
So we talked about opportunities quite a bit. What about the challenges? What do you see as the main challenges for your fund and for Chinese PVC more generally moving forward?
Sure. I mean, I think the data shows for PE and VC in China, the numbers have, on a macro basis, reduced over the last few years, and I think foreign involvement in the Chinese PE/VC industry as a composition of total numbers has fallen, and unfortunately, we are moving towards this bifurcation of two markets. We're trying to bridge that gap in a small way that we can, to try and invest around the world and to try and bridge China to the rest of the world and bridge other countries and other companies into China as well. So one of the things that we've been working on for the last year is the Capstone report, and it was based on one of our portfolio companies. The company is based in the UK and has a wonderful product and a wonderful technology. But for all intents and purposes, China is a very foreign market to them. So the Capstone report has been really a comprehensive way of giving him, the founder, an insight into the China market, what the value of the China market could be for that company. And that helps drive the valuation for the company. It helps drive the valuation for the China component as well.
You've opened up the founder's eyes.
Yeah,
on China.
Sure. We've created a report which covers the market, regulatory considerations, financial planning, and the path of least resistance to opening the China market.
And so, are they sold on it?
I think they found the exercise very positive. They were very happy with the findings of the report. It was the comprehensive effort of 7 motivated CEIBS team members, both Chinese and international. We had very complete and comprehensive viewpoints on taking a look at the opportunity. We also interviewed a lot of doctors in the field, and we made a bridge through the Capstone report from the UK, what is a very UK-centric technology, into what could work in the China market.
Actually, many of our alumni come back, not just to me, but I think to our faculty, and say that these capstone projects actually do make a real difference. And some of the biggest companies in China have changed some of their business practices. Which brings me to our next topic that I would like to discuss. So when I joined CEIBS, one of the things that attracted me was this long-term vision of building a community. We are not a transactional school, at least I believe we're not a transactional school. And so what makes you as an alumnus come back? That's what you of course want. You are very generous with your time, as many of our alumni are. And I think it's a unique feature of CEIBS globally, and more certainly in China. So I think no other school in China can possibly rival us in terms of not just the size of our alumni network, but also in terms of the engagement that we have with our alumni. So what makes you come back?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I think when I reflect on that question, I feel very grateful to the elements that I received. So from the foundational perspective, education, I also received a broader network, and I've received so much that has helped my own business. It makes me feel like I want to give back, just as much as I received. It's like that social bank account, you receive something and you like to try to add back to that bank account. CEIBS, the network and the alumni network has always been very, very collegiate. It's a network that tries to empower each node of that network. I have reached out to people within the network to try and help my own portfolio companies, and they've been very open and accepting and gracious to help me. And then I think a lot of knowledge has been gained not only from learning from the professors, but also from other alumni and other classmates. And when you have that environment of sharing, when each individual is willing to contribute to the group, then it makes it quite a powerful organization. When you get to have the opportunity to talk to professors with decades of knowledge about business specialities, or when you have opportunities to talk to alumni or your own classmates, you can really get an insight into an industry, and then that empowers you to make better decisions.
And so what can we do to be better? We want to get better. So as I always say, I cannot be perfect, but I can become better.
I think as long as CEIBS continues to empower and educate the business leaders of today and really build into that social bank account, if they can continue to create leading content, educational content that will be very, very relevant for business leaders, then business leaders can move to the next level. They can break out of the plateau that they may find themselves in. If you begin to create self-improvement in those business leaders, then they can go on to sow the leaders of the future.
It takes a lot of effort on our part, obviously. It's not easy, but hopefully we are moving in the right direction. And so what would be your top 3 pieces of advice for somebody who wants to do business in China and has a global, international perspective?
I think it's important to be open-minded and flexible. It's important to see opportunities with open eyes. It's also important to be prepared for opportunities. So the one way that you can prepare yourself is to empower yourself. And to empower yourself is to improve your education, the foundation. So when opportunities do arise, you can take them. And I think also finally, to avoid getting too attached to the geopolitics or the macro environment, but to meet people. And just as we've done in Africa and in Sao Paulo and in China, building those bridges, meeting people, understanding the counterparty, creating more certainty.
I like those pieces of advice. They might be different from mine. Actually, there is value in diversity. So I think our time is up. Great to see you on campus, and let's definitely do this again.
Great.
Thank you. Thank you
very much
for your feedback.
Thank you.